Okay, good evening. It is Monday, February 16th, currently 8:50 p.m. I'm up late doing this. I actually wanted to, because of a lot of the hype about bipartisanship and the Republicans refusing to cooperate, I really wanted to go over what bipartisanship is, how it exists, um, what it was intended for, and then what it's become. Also, I believe that bipartisanship has a fatal flaw, and I'll get to that here in a moment. First off, let's look at what bipartisanship is. The definition, according to the American Heritage Dictionary of the English language, bipartisanship is consisting of, or supported by, members of two parties, especially two major political parties. What this is when two parties come together and decide on one idea, one bill, one resolution. It is a bipartisan resolution. They've come together and came to this conclusion together. And this is fantastic, absolutely fantastic, because it gets several viewpoints into one room, and it's used to display, to show everybody reading and watching and listening that it's supported by all the experts, all the officials, the leaders, the commanders, etc., that it's acceptable to them, it's acceptable to all of them. And they do this in order to garner support. They want to gather up as many people as they can to accept this. That way there's no conflict, no fight back, no despite as a result of the resolution, the decision. And this bipartisan support definitely has a history throughout the world, but its history in the United States started out during the founding of the United States Constitution, between the Federalist and anti-federalist parties. The Federalists wanted to build a stronger central government because they believed that a weak federal government meant that states would just go off and do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and would not support each other. And in just the 10 years that the Articles of Confederation existed, they saw a lot of evidence that this was going to happen. It was almost impossible for the federal government to develop any funds through taxing without, all these states' approvals, which none of them gave. So the federal government had almost no power whatsoever. Federalists stepped up and said, look, we need more. If we can't get more, we cannot protect the mass of the states. And states aren't going to protect each other for very long. Eventually, they're just going to have to take care of their own. In which case, a federal power is required in order to help defend the United States as a whole. So they got together, and the anti-federalists responded, saying, look, if you start developing this, it will become too powerful, and it will begin to intrude on the liberties of the states and the people. So the Federalists, in an attempt to come to a conclusion, said, you're right, it could become too powerful, except look what we've done. We have put these amendments in, these articles, we've restricted the government to doing this and this and this. We are protecting the people through the Constitution, and as long as the people are willing to defend the Constitution, the leaders cannot usurp it. This was bipartisan. They came to this conclusion. Federalists and anti-federalists alike said, yeah, we like it. Boom. It is one document. Anti-federalists still had disputes with it, of course, you're going to. But over time, they realized, look, we don't have a choice anymore. It is too weak as it is. Federalists said, it could become too strong, so we have to ensure that we've got protections in it. This sort of bipartisanship was healthy and developed the United States into a very powerful entity. Now, over time, though, the idea of bipartisanship became corrupted, and definitely, what it's become is, instead of, hey, let's come to a conclusion for what's best for our constituents, what's best for our country, or our state or our locality. It's now, hey, defy your principles, come to my side. Otherwise, you're not cooperating, partisan politicians expect a guy on the other side of the aisle to defy his principles and come to his, the other side. And that just shouldn't be so. Because it's not a cooperation anymore, it's hostage. Inevitably, the individual that refuses to come to the other side is going to look bad. He's going to be considered confrontational, he's going to be considered uncooperative, partisan even. He's going to be called partisan, even if the very ideas that they're trying to sell to him are completely defiant of principles. They demand that he crosses over. And there was definitely a point when this didn't exist, or when not didn't exist, but this became a serious problem. So parties began to infiltrate each other. Now, I'm a conservative, and even though I support third parties, I still have a heart for the Republican Party. It is the party of my birth, it is the party of my growth, it is the party that I hold dear. So I'm going to use this as an example. Socialists, for a large part, as socialists and fascists, in fact, have infiltrated the Republican Party en masse. You have what's called rhinos. Rhinos include pseudocons and neocons. Neocons, of course, being the fascists, the power-hungry expansionists. The pseudocons being ones that kind of pretend to be conservatives, only long enough to step in and get an authority position, and then they completely defy that specter. So with this, no more is there bipartisanship. All it is the parties are kind of, it's doing this. They're kind of moving in the same direction. The existing parties these days don't have an identical end result like the Federalist and anti-federalists. Nowadays, they actually want two different things. So the way they were like this for decades, they're now kind of doing this. Bipartisanship cannot exist anymore because of that. Because with the infiltration, they're becoming basically the same party, sadly. But even if they were to separate back to their well-defined differences, it can't exist because the idea of bipartisanship has been corrupted. People just assume that if you do not become like me, you're being partisan. So bipartisanship can't exist anymore. What does exist, however, is the idea that these parties can restore. This is where the third parties come in. It gives the voters that are getting sick and tired of their parties defying their principles the opportunity to stick it to them, so to speak. And it forces the major parties to either restore or fail. The Republican Party has restored more than once. Not to mention the Whig Party failed because they refused to change, or they refused to restore to what they had been. With that, my advice to the two political parties is go back to your principles. Stop defying. Restore to what things were. Bipartisanship won't be necessary anymore because we'll all have the same goal. And bipartisanship will be nothing more than the debate that Congress was intended for.